In today's episode, I'm going to sit down and interview a student here at Warrior Trading. His name is Adam. He's a day trader from Utah. He has just earned his first profitability badge, and he is a Warrior Pro graduate. He's going to share his experience having a fairly long learning curve where he was going through an extended period of being more or less a break-even trader. And he's going to talk about how he was able to break out of the kind of emotional cycle of just being in a rut and being unable to make any serious progress. But he finally had that turning point. He broke out and he has now some really strong momentum. And I'm so impressed with him. By the way, if you want to be able to learn my strategy that I'm trading every single day, you can always check out a 2-week trial here at Warrior Trading. There'll be a link pinned to the top of the comments and in the description. Now we're gonna go ahead and jump into this episode. And I want to remind you, as always, trading is risky. My results aren't typical and neither are Adam's. So let's hear about Adam's journey of learning how to day trade. So big picture, tell me, how did you get into day trading to begin with?
Well, it was all the way back in 2008-ish. It's right around the Great Recession, and I got very interested. Well, okay, I was interested a couple years before that, but I finally was like, I'm going to start trading. You know, I'm 20 years old now. I got some money. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I get into some garbage stuff. I'm drawn to penny stocks at first, and so I do some penny stocks here and there, and some different things. And I did that for a few years, and overall lost money. But I saw the potential was there, and I knew, like, if I could really give this my all, I think I could do it. And so that sat with me for years and years. I mean, basically from 2008 all the way to 2019 and when I started.
Yeah, it's almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And what did you do in the meantime? Did you go get regular jobs or?
Yeah, I was doing other jobs and was very lucky to have a great career and making good money and paying off debt. Because I was like, you know what, if I don't have any debt hanging over me, I just feel like emotionally I could come into it without that stress. And so that was a big goal of mine, is just start doing that. And so, I had gotten super close to getting all my debt paid off, and then, lost my job, got laid off, and decided, okay, well, I guess I'll start this a little before I was ready. And I had actually watched you on YouTube for maybe 2 years, Facebook and YouTube. So it was right after you had started your original small account challenge is when I started watching you.
Okay, 2017.
So I started getting very interested back in probably mid 17, maybe late 17. And I just kept watching you and kept working at my other job. And finally it was obviously put in a position I had to do it. And so I went for it.
That's awesome. Now, when you kind of first took the leap and said, all right, I'm going to do this full time. And I'm thinking about my own experience at that moment, having already been interested for a while, having dabbled a little bit, had an account already. How did you kind of approach, like, how am I going to find stocks to day trade? Were you thinking about day trading, or were you kind of like, maybe I'll, swing trade or kind of be like investing? Or?
No, so I was absolutely day trading.
Okay.
But it was kind of going off of the little bit I got from you and my own thoughts about what I could make happen. And so when I first started thinking about day trading, even before finding you, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to just trade something. And if I could just get like 1% a day. And then I started doing Excel sheets, if compound interest, doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, it wasn't small caps really, didn't even cross my mind until I came across your stuff.
Yep.
And then seeing obviously the potential moves with what they do. So I mean, it just kind of kept evolving until I found you and got some great education, and some great material to be like, okay, this I can sink my teeth into, and this makes sense, and okay, I can do this. And so,
That's interesting. I find, and you joined Warrior within like that first month of being like, I'm going to trade. What sometimes people will do is they'll say, oh, I'm not going to join the class. It's maybe too expensive. I'm just going to trade on my own. And once I've made a couple $1,000, then I'll buy the class. And And like on the one hand, I get it. Like, if it's not something you can afford right now, learn as much as you can for free on YouTube. Like, there's a lot of resources out there for sure. But on the other hand, it seems a little unrealistic to expect that you'd make money trading before you learn how to trade. And then once I
Hmm.
make money, basically just through luck, then I'll pay for the education. That just to me seems backwards. I think the better approach is to be like, I'm going to keep doing my side hustle, driving Uber, Lyft, or, DoorDash, or keep working my regular job to make enough money to actually invest in myself, whether it's through the education or, funding that first account and starting really carefully. Because otherwise what ends up happening is you end up just throwing money into the market and it's pretty much gone. And just like in the snap of fingers, you could lose a couple $1,000s, and it's like that was one trade, and what did you learn from that loss? Maybe probably not a lot as a beginner because you don't even know how to really interpret losses. And that could have been, an entire curriculum or entire semester of education, whether it's with me or somewhere else. So I know I sound biased, but I think I think you're fortunate that you came in with that perspective. Did you go to college before you went to, got into the workforce?
No, well, I did go to college, but not before I got in the workforce. So,
Okay.
um, I was working at Target, and
Okay.
I kept moving up the ranks, and
A
I
lot of
got
single, a lot of moms go to Target. This could be really great,
that's so
right?
funny you say that because I met
Yeah.
my wife working at Target.
No kidding. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
that's where single men, fellas, you want to meet someone, you get a job at Target. Okay. This is proof
Yeah,
it
that
works.
was way back before Target became the thing, That was,
Okay.
geez, that was
Okay.
17, 18 years ago. But
Okay.
still, yes, that is funny. So anyway, so I had moved up as far as I could without a degree. They're like, you have to have a degree if
Yeah.
you want to become an executive here. So you
Oh,
just
okay.
have to do it. So I was like, all right. So I started doing that, and and then I switched careers, crazy enough, in the middle of me going to college. So then
Okay.
the college wasn't even going to be for that. But um, then I ended up finishing that, and then I've never used it. But at least I got it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the most important thing is just I kept delaying going to college for years.
Yeah.
Like I'll do it later, maybe another time. And then
Yeah.
finally I'm like, dude, if I would just do it, I'd be
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
like just
Yeah.
start. And
Right.
so it's really kind of just discipline, just
Yeah.
doing it,
Yep.
getting it over with, and then being able to look back and be like, hey, I accomplished that.
You accomplished
And
it.
who
Right.
knew where my life was going to go? Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe I still need it sometime in my life. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. My
all that
my I
discipline.
was kind of similar. I got the degree and I never used it. I never put it on job application. I never really used it in that practical sense. But on the other hand, it was the discipline of getting it done that was really good. So all right, so you get yourself set up. Now I want to ask you a little bit of a controversial question. And I want to hear what your take is on commission-free brokers or using an offshore broker as you're getting started.
Well, I mean, if you can do it, definitely commission free. I mean, it just depends on your situation. But yeah, where I was able to make that choice, absolutely commission free. Um, but I know it's all personal. For me, it's very mental having that commission, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it on every trade I took. And so if you're the type of personality that can totally just hide that away and not think about it and it doesn't affect you, then yeah, the fills and different things on the commission broker was good, and I enjoyed that. But yeah, just the mental aspect was just way too heavy for me to get over.
So for those of you guys tuning in, when I learned how to trade, there was no option. It was commission, no matter where you went. There was no such thing as a commission-free broker. So, Thinkorswim or TD Ameritrade at that time, it was like $10 a trade. So you were paying commissions and they were big commissions. The retail brokers like E-Trade, Ameritrade, Schwab, they were all $8 to $10 per trade. So it was super expensive for us. So most of us in those days went to one of these discount brokers that kind of cater to more professional day traders, people that are taking like, a dozen or more trades a day. Because if you figure at that time, if you took 10 trades and it's $8 a trade, you're at $80 in commissions. Well, buy and sell, you could be at $160 in commission. My daily goal in those days was 200 a day. So to spend 180 in commissions feels really stupid. So like So what was your daily goal when you were getting started?
Well, when I first started it, I didn't have a daily goal.
Okay.
So I first started without Warrior for a
Yeah.
couple weeks, and that
Okay.
went south very fast.
Okay.
So that was like 2 weeks, lost 15 grand. And then I was like,
Wow.
I
What were
gotta,
you
I gotta get to
trading?
Warrior. Well, I looked up Warrior and I
Okay.
was like, I don't know if I can afford that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, turns out I couldn't afford not to pay for Warrior trading.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of was looking, okay, these are the stocks he's looking at. And so I had invested into a scanner, Trade Ideas at the time,
Yep.
set it up, started looking for the same type of stuff that you were, that I learned from you on YouTube.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got my face torn off. I
Wow.
mean, just
Yeah. Just
just
being like slightly
fast.
behind the ball, like just not dialed in, right? I mean, you were a beginner.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, picking up the technical aspect of it wasn't is not hard for me. I was able to pick that up at like within days of watching your YouTube stuff. However, the emotional stuff I was not prepared for at all. And
Yeah.
so that is what got me. Like I would get into something and I wouldn't take profit quickly. And
Yeah.
then it would go the other way on me. And I just keep holding and holding. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I got to sell that. And
Right.
then I'd do it again. And
Right.
so,
Right.
yeah,
So, and when you first started, what broker were you using when you first funded your like first trading account? Were you using one of the
yeah,
regular retail brokers?
yeah. TD Ameritrade I was using.
Okay. Okay. But that
And
was when
so,
that was a couple years ago. That was before they were commission free, right?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
it was.
Okay.
Yep.
So then you
And
started then, which at that time, it probably was a no-brainer to switch to the offshore broker, right? Because the offshore broker is commission free or is a lower commission than the $8 at that time, no?
Well, yes, it was a little bit lower, but the main reason I had to is because I was at $30,000 before, lost 15
Right.
grand before joining Warrior, and I was like,
Okay.
oh shit. All right, I
Yeah.
better I better do something. So
Yeah.
yes, pretty quickly I opened a CMEG account. So
Okay. Right. Because you basically cut the account in half.
yeah.
So again, for those of you guys that are tuning in, these offshore brokers have been around for probably, I mean, at least 10 years. I wasn't aware of them when I first started trading. I switched off of E-Trade and ended up using discount brokers like Lightspeed, which has been around for quite a long time. Um, but then, I kind of heard through the grapevine about these offshore brokers. And the whole deal with them is the pattern day trader rule, the PDT rule, is enforced by US regulators on all US broker dealers. So all the US broker dealers have to enforce it on anyone that opens an account with them. Even if you're an international customer opening an account in the US, you still have to follow the PDT rule. But non-US broker dealers, so like a broker dealer in Australia or in Canada or in Ireland, doesn't matter, anywhere, doesn't have to enforce the PDT rule because they're outside the United States. So then any Canadian customer or Irish customer or Australian customer that opens an account with that broker isn't subjected to the PDT rule, which is great. And there's a small handful of brokers down in the Caribbean that have been operating for like the last 10 years that because they're in the Caribbean, they don't enforce the PDT rule. But they also are willing to accept US residents as customers so long as you acknowledge that they didn't advertise to you because they're not allowed to solicit US customers. So there's kind of this fine line where they pretty much, I feel like they primarily service US customers, but they don't advertise. So you won't hear about these brokers except through kind of, word of mouth. So for most beginner traders, unless you're in a community and you've kind of gotten the word of mouth about these brokers, you wouldn't even know about it when you're getting started. So switching to an offshore broker made sense for the two reasons. One, the commissions are more like $2 or $3 a trade, which they still are
Mhm.
today, I think. Number one, and then number two, the account minimum was more like $500, right? So
Yep.
you were able to set it up, but you were dealing with this emotional issue with that feeling that every trade was cost. You're in the red on every trade you take just because of the fees and commissions.
That's exactly how I thought. Every
Yeah,
trade I took, I was like, okay, I need to get 2 to 3 cents on this trade just
just to
to
cover.
break even.
Yeah.
And that would sit with me because then I would, on cutting the loss, or cutting the trade, even
Hmm.
with a winner as it's coming back down, I was like, golly, if I cut it here, it's basically a loss, even though I still have a couple cents, just
Yeah.
And it sounds so dumb now when you really think about it logically.
Mm.
Cut it. It's going down. Just cut it.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get over that because of
Yeah.
the commissions were just stuck in my head. So
Yeah. And I
uh,
mean, I can relate to that because I still pay commissions at the broker that I'm at. And some people are like, I don't understand why. Because in this day and age, you could use a commission-free broker. It would save you thousands, for me, thousands a month. But the commission-free brokers and these retail brokers, they don't give you as much flexibility in how you route your orders to the market. So all the orders are routed through their wholesaler, where they get the payment for the order flow. So they get the kickback, which is why they can go commission-free because they're getting paid from this wholesaler. But that means you can't control how your order is sent to the market. So for a trader trading with big size like me, a 15 or 20,000 share order, if the wholesaler kind of drops the ball on that order and it takes a second to execute or a second and a half to execute, that's unacceptable. And I know we're talking about seconds, but when you look at the execution speed that I get with my broker, it's 1/10 of a second to execute. From when I
yeah.
press the buy button to fill, it's 1/10 of a second. The one of the fastest commission-free brokers right now is advertising that they're 0.44, so a little less than half a second.
Mm,
But even that is,
yeah.
I mean, that's still 4 times longer than what I'm dealing with. So I'm willing to pay the commission, but there are times where, I'll have a stock that's cheaper, like a penny stock, and I'll feel like, man, every 10,000 shares I trade on this is $30 in commissions. Do I really? I'm going to be at $300 in commissions, in 10 trades. Or, if I really size up, I could be at $1,000 in commissions. So for you, what would you say what was the catalyst that made you decide to switch off the commission-free broker, knowing that, or switch off the offshore broker, knowing that you were going to have to get your account up above 25,000?
Yeah, there was two things. One was in the community there was a couple people, well, a lot of people talking about it, but I had a couple people that I was more in contact with that had recently done it and
Yeah.
said, "Man, you got to do this. Like, I think it makes a big difference." And at that time, it had just switched. So, TD Ameritrade had just started offering that maybe a year and a half earlier.
Yeah.
This is 2023, I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the very beginning of 2023. And so they had done it a year or two earlier. So there's that reason. And then at that exact same moment, CMEG upped the commission, well, the trading commission structure. It was like per execution, not
Yeah.
per trade they were charging.
Right. I
And
remember that.
I don't know if they went back to the old way or
They
not,
did
but
revert back.
okay. But that was a nightmare for me because I'm like, man, I get 3, 4, 5 fills on these, which I don't even have that many shares, but
Yeah.
it gets broken up into 2 shares and 10 shares. I'm like, man, I'm just trying to fill 200 shares and it's still getting broken up. I
Yeah.
can't afford to pay that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And so, I was able to bite the bullet and say, you know what, this is just not worth doing this. And
Yeah.
so I was able to scrape up some money and get back over the PDT
Nice.
and
Good for
then
you.
go for it. So,
Good for you. I think what CMEG did, and I've seen other brokers do this before, is when business starts to slow down, they increase prices, which is like they're like, well, we're making less money, so we need to increase prices. But that only fuels business going down more. So it's like the
mhm.
exact opposite. Their instinct, I think, was exactly opposite. And they did revert and change course on that decision. But yeah, but that for you ended up being that catalyst of saying, you know what, I'm just going to take the leap. I'm going to go commission free. So then what was it like when you started trading commission free?
Well, I mean, I got so excited the first couple months because
Yeah.
the first couple months I just went gangbusters.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy smokes, that's it. I just unlocked it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, well, I mean, don't get me wrong. It was the catalyst that changed it, but it didn't just change like that. I still went through a lot of rough patches. So I had a couple of great months. I think it was like 3 or 4 months, which I had never had more than 2 green months in a row. For some reason, I just was kept getting stuck at 2 green months and then I'd go red again. And so finally I broke through and I went like 4 or 5 green months in a row. I was like, okay, I did it. And then we hit a time in small caps where things got a little rough. I mean, that happens. We're at the ebbs and the flows. and I couldn't pull off. I couldn't, slow down from what I was doing, and then I just kept pushing it. Like, God, I've got to make back the loss I just had for the last 2 weeks. Like, and instead of just slowing down and just dealing with that and sitting with that for a couple weeks or a month until it got hot again, I just kept pushing and pushing, and it keeps getting worse. And so it kind of went back to the same types of emotional things I was dealing with before.
Yeah.
But at least in this regard, once the dust settled from the rough trading of small caps and it got hot again, I started making money again.
Yeah.
I was still green after commissions. And so that was the big difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't great,
Yeah.
and I was only a little bit green, but at least I was green this time,
Yeah.
where I would have always been red before. So,
Right. So when you factor in kind of the ebb and the flow, the ups and the downs, and when you're kind of going through that with the commissions, you're just sort of like going a little lower, a little lower, a little lower. But
yeah,
once you took the commissions out of the equation, it's more you're keeping your head just above water. You may not be like, winning any marathons or anything, but you're keeping your head
yeah,
above water, which has survived till you thrive, right?
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
all this whole time, you're gaining experience, right? You're getting better at reading level 2, reading the tape. So now I don't think it's a secret that Thinkorswim is not the most intuitive platform. It's a little bit of it almost stands totally by itself as being a very unusual platform compared to almost
Mhm.
everything else, which is much more standardized. So how did you go from using CMEG, which uses the standardized trading software that we're all kind of familiar with, to using Thinkorswim? What did you do there?
Well, so I first started using Thinkorswim those first couple weeks. So I had
Yeah,
a little bit of experience with it, but I hated it. And then I went to
yeah.
CMEG. I'm like, now this is what I'm talking about.
Okay,
And so then
right, right.
when I went to come back, I mean, I had been thinking about it for 6 months to a year, and I just didn't want to do it because I'm like, Thinkorswim's terrible. I can't trade on that. And so then when a couple people in the community were talking to me about using DAS, and then one trader was awesome and had it set up perfectly how I like to trade. I'm like, that's
Yeah,
awesome. So I used
yeah.
his layout, and it was boom, off and running. And
Got it.
so luckily I didn't have to come back and start using Thinkorswim, or else I don't think I would have ever done it.
Got it. Okay. So, right. So CMEG being a smaller offshore broker, and again, for those of you guys who are tuning in, they license the software you use for trading from a couple different companies. I think they have 3 or maybe 4 platforms they use, but one of them is DAS Trader, which is software that's available with dozens of brokers, kind of like CMEG, that are a little smaller. Some are in the US, some are international, anyways. So you can use that same software with Thinkorswim, or with Charles Schwab. So essentially, you were using the exact same front end platform that you were using with CMEG, but connected to Thinkorswim's back end for the order routing. Did you notice execution speed difference between the two?
Um, Not really. And the
Okay.
reason I think is just because I was using such small size. I mean,
Totally.
I
Right.
was between 100 shares and 500 shares max is
Yeah.
what I ended up getting to. So,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there was a trade here and there that I was like, it didn't feel quite as fast, but like it's hard to really see that on a
Negligible.
cup. Yeah.
And
So,
that's what I say usually about Webull and Thinkorswim. Like they are a little slower than the direct access brokers, but when you're trading with small size, it's kind of negligible, and it's not going to be the difference between success and failure, is what I would say. If I think for me, I've reached a point where I trade with too much size to be able to really trade as well as I do right now on a commission-free broker because of the routing and everything else. So like there's sort of a limit. In fact, if I tried to trade the size I trade right now, there's some times where my order just wouldn't fill at all, and I would miss the trade entirely. So I'd actually make less money. Right. But for you, you're more at the beginning of that curve where you get the benefit of commission-free trading. You got a reliable platform that you like, and now the emotions have come down a little bit. So, um, yeah, that's really interesting. Now, kind of walk me through that period of the emotion that you're dealing with, because you said you had 4 or 5 green months, and then all of a sudden you went red, and this was when you're now at Thinkorswim. but you were digging your heels in. Like you were getting
Hmm.
kind of, I would sort of say like that emotional spiral where you have a loss and now you're upset, frustrated, trying to make back the loss. And so you're getting a little desperate. So you'll trade kind of anything that's moving. But then because you've lowered your quality standard, now you incur another loss. And now you feel even more upset. And now you want to make it back even more. And now you incur another loss. And then the losses start stacking and getting bigger. And then next thing you know, you're like, I'm in a hole. I've given back too much. How did you
Kind of
break that?
sounds like kind of sounds like you listened to me
Oh
when I
yeah.
was when I was complaining about this for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, you
that's
better check that teddy
exactly.
bear in the corner because I got a real dial in on you.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I did, you know. I mean, and honestly, it's hard to break that cycle,
Yeah.
but I would say, I mean, even today, I still struggle with that
Me too.
mightily.
From
I
time to
mean,
time. Yeah.
but the thing that makes that way better was your introduction to Ted and Diane and Wise Mind Trading. And that is, I mean, it didn't flip overnight. I start talking to them and then all of a sudden, oh, I'm better. But just by starting to talk to them and and then spending a lot of time over years now, I've been talking to them, it just keeps getting better and better. And I've been able to handle those things. I mean, I still get the urges. I still think about, you know, doing the same type of stuff I've done in the past. Um, but being able to work through a lot of that stuff with them has been awesome. And I mean, I first started doing it, I was like, this is so expensive. I can only do it, you know, once every couple months. And so I would do that. But the other major turning point for me is when I finally said, again, I got to invest in myself. Just like I said, I've got to put some money to get back over the PDT to do the commission free. I've got to spend some money on myself to make this work. And I said, I'm going to start meeting with her once or twice a month.
Okay.
And so I
Yeah.
started meeting with Diane once or twice a month for, man, it's been almost 2 years now.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been really cool.
So Ted and Diane, they run the trading psychology program at Warrior Trading. I started working with Ted more than a decade ago when not I didn't approach him from the perspective of learning how to deal with my emotions trading. I was kind of on the track towards getting a divorce. I had gotten married in my early 20s and it wasn't going well, and I was like trying to figure out what we're going to do, and it was pretty quickly in our sessions. It was like me and my ex-wife. I really had very different philosophies on how we wanted to live our lives, and we were really very different people. And we probably got married a little too young, and the right thing was for us to move in different directions. And so I was like, all right, well, with that resolved, we've still got 45 minutes. so, so I was like, what else is going on? So I was like, well, I'm doing this trading thing, and and honestly, there were a lot of days that I came in, and it was like, how are you doing? And I was like, you know, I'm, the marriage stuff is like that's going on, but like right now, I'm so frustrated because I just had another really stupid day trading, and I can't believe it. And he kind of became my accountability partner in a way because trading can be very isolating, especially
Mm.
I mean there are some places where I don't know, you get a job working at like a hedge fund or something and be around people, but most day traders are pretty isolated, so you don't have a community or support system, and I didn't when I was getting started. So he really helped me a lot. And then as I started to find success and then started teaching people and this and that, I fairly early on was like, hey, would you be interested in doing some sessions for some of these traders that I'm working with, because I think they'd really benefit. So anyway, and so he does sessions at Warrior every Friday, and those are recorded for members. But he can also book one-on-one sessions with people, and Diane, who's on with his team, does as well. So that's how you got into that. And I think the thing that is a big piece of this puzzle is developing that awareness of the cycle that you're in, because I think a lot of people will get into these emotional cycles and they're like a victim of the emotion, and they're not even fully aware of what they're doing. Like in the moment, they're just hammering that buy button and getting super emotional, and then they take a huge loss, and they're not able to kind of get the perspective of what just happened there. That was a moment of like total emotional hijack, where you are totally caught in fight, flight, fear, trying to make back this loss, and you've thrown all logic out the window. And so being able to just get to the point of like, something here is not clicking is important. And I think that's kind of the benefit of learning about trading psychology, kind of as you're going. I have a book back here that also some of you guys tuning in might enjoy. This is called Trade Mindfully by Gary Dayton. It's a really solid book about trading. It was not a new book, but one that you guys might enjoy, because once you start to develop, like, it's almost like a little bit of a roadmap of some of the kind of emotional traps that exist as you're learning how to trade. Almost like a map of the landmines. Like when you're learning how to trade, these are some things you should look out for that are probably going to happen. At some point, you're going to have a big loss, and you're going to get so frustrated, so angry that you're going to do anything to try to make back that loss. So you got to be on the lookout for that, because, so once you kind of know, like, all right, this is something I need to be aware of, then when you see it in your own trading, it's easier to kind of identify it and then realize, okay, I've made this mistake. How do I recognize these triggers, in real time before I've kind of crossed the point of no return and all of a sudden lost 15, 20 grand in one trade or 1 week or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
So then going back to that period, did you put yourself into like trader rehab to kind of break that downward spiral? How did you break it?
Well, so the first couple times I was doing it, it was exactly what you're saying, where you don't even aware you're not aware that you're in the cycle and what's going on. You're just losing money and you're losing money. And then, as I worked with Ted and Diane, I started, it was much easier to start to say, okay, now I know what I'm doing, but I can't stop it anyway. And so through continued work with them, I'm just getting better. The awareness is pretty darn good now. It's just you've got to just deal with it. And it's hard to do that. My personality is just really hard to just say, fine, you win, and just walk away. But that's trading. You're not going to win on every trade. And I'm saying that logically. It makes so much sense to me as I say it.
Sure.
But emotionally, even to this day, I'm like, no, I hate losing. I hate being wrong.
I know.
And I hate losing. And so trading is a very hard career path for me because of that.
Yeah.
But
and that's kind of like we all bring our own emotion, disposition to the table. Like that, I've done some interviews. One of our students that I did an interview with a couple years back, he's a pharmacist, and he's like, I've been in a career where you can't make mistakes. There's no such thing as like I'm right 75% of the time when it comes to filling prescriptions. Like you got to be right 100% of the time. And trading is like so different from that, because it really is. It's a game of kind of statistics, and it's recognizing I'm going to take 100 shots and I'm only going to make 60, 70 of them, and that's okay. I got the ball back. I'm going to take another shot.
Well, so speaking of basketball, how you're talking about that?
Yeah, let's hear it.
That's a great segue into something that I really worked with Diane about, is that I grew up playing basketball. I was a big basketball fan and played all growing up. And my issue that I found in basketball that translated to trading was, in basketball, after every practice, after every time I shot, I had to make my last shot. And a lot of times it was like, oh, I have to make my last 5 or 10 shots, right? Well, in trading, you can't do that. You're just going to keep making the losses worse. But I have done that my whole last 6 years. It's like, I've got to end on a green trade. I've got to end on a green trade. And then you have another red one. And then you have another red one. It's like, gosh. And so, yeah, I've really had to start dealing with that over the last year or so of realizing it's okay to end on a red trade. It's okay, just walk away. But yeah, so found that, because I've heard your pharmacist story before, and I'm like, that makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't quite sit with me. I think I could be wrong. But then I started realizing, oh my goodness, it's that I have to walk away feeling good. And yeah, so that was probably the biggest emotional trigger over the last 6 years, and I didn't realize it for years, that I kept wanting to just have that feel good trade end the day.
I a couple months ago, I went to see the that Bill Murray movie, Life Aquatic. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't.
It was directed by Wes Anderson, and Bill Murray was. It was for anniversary of the release of it, and so Bill Murray was there and did a Q&A at the beginning of the movie, and someone asked him about his kids, and one of his kids is a basketball coach, and he said, the question was something like, "How do you feel about your kid not being like, into acting or something like that?" And he said that. When his kid was learning how to play basketball, I think I don't remember exactly what happened, but Bill Murray, they must have had a friend or someone who was a really successful basketball player who came over and was like, one of these 7 foot tall people, like a really successful basketball player, and was just like making shot after shot after shot. And his son, he said he would just like miss and miss and miss and miss. But I kept telling, he's like, I kept telling him, but you got the ball back. You got the ball back. Take another shot. You got the ball back. Take another shot. And when I was listening to him say that, I I don't know. I don't know if I just had a red day, but for some reason it really sunk in with me of like almost the big picture of like life. Like you got the ball back. You got another shot. Like not just a shot like on the day, but like you still have your trading account.
Yep.
You still like you still have the ability to sit down tomorrow morning and take a couple trades. Like, okay, so you lost X amount yesterday. Doesn't matter. You got the ball back. You could still do this. And so I kind of thought about that like more on the sort of big scale of like, I don't know, sometimes people who, I don't know, have a near death experience to get a second shot at life. It's like you got the ball back. You got
Mhm.
like be grateful for what you got here. Because it's so easy to get so fixated and so frustrated on these little things and lose perspective.
Mhm.
And that's where I think, a therapist or, a trading coach, someone like that can help you with perspective. There's always going to be someone out there who makes more than you. There's always going to be someone out there who loses more than you. You're never going to be the biggest winner or the biggest loser. It's always going to be in the middle. And even on your own trading, there's only one trade ever that'll be your biggest winner and one trade ever that'll be your biggest loser. And everything else is just in between. And I
Yeah.
kind of had this realization that like sometimes when I have a big red day, I might be really frustrated in the moment. And then I say, Ross, are you even going to remember this trade a week from now? Like, get real. Like, think back last week to your biggest loss. I, I don't even remember the ticker. So it's like, this loss most likely is going to be completely out of your mind within like a week. So for that reason alone, don't spend another moment giving it attention because it's nothing. It doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
that's that head game. And
Mhm.
I've been doing this for a long time and I've gotten a little older. I think when, you know, young men in trading, a lot of testosterone, a lot of, emotion comes out when you're wrong. And I think getting
Mhm.
older, gaining more experience, it's sort of, there's a process of like, it comes down a little bit. On the other hand, some of these young guys who are out there can be incredibly successful because they've got no fear. They'll take, huge risks. But so we're all at different places on the spectrum. But
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, speaking of that, it has been hard being in the community now, going on my seventh year, and I just barely got my badge,
yeah.
and watching others just come in. I started in 2019, and I'd watch people come in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and they're all getting badges, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe that's just not like, and honestly, that was kind of the change why I went from small caps to large caps is I was at this point where I finally was like, I mean, I was still making money. Don't get me wrong, a few months ago when I switched, but I was not doing that well. And I was just like, dude, I should be accelerating. And after a month or two of being red, I was like, you know what? Like, maybe this just isn't for me. And instead of quitting, I was just like, I'm going to try something different. And I think the reason it took me 6 years to finally try something different was I wanted to be right instead of just making money.
Mm,
And so I,
mm,
I think it's just way more important to just put that aside. It's okay
yeah.
to be wrong.
Yeah.
and just go with
Yeah.
something different.
No,
Try
you're
something
right.
different.
Sometimes patience is not the right way. Sometimes you got to switch gears. And you also, I mean, you have a benefit right now which you didn't have in 2022 and 2023, which is that there's a big tailwind in the overall market, right?
Hmm.
Because in 2022 we were in a bear market in the overall market. So although
Right.
you had individual stocks that would have days that were, strong and this and that, it it, it was it was a really hard time for a lot of traders. And
Yeah.
you kept your head above water through that. So that also to me is like, surviving during some of the really difficult markets. Maybe you didn't thrive then, but you survived. And now, oh look, the market's starting to pick up and you're also starting to pick up. Okay, maybe there is a correlation there. And it would make sense that there is. I think there is. But, then all of a sudden the thing that happens is that it's just timing works out that the market starts to pick up, you start to gain some momentum, and then you start gaining confidence. And the next time the market slows down, that confidence will still be there because you now have a track record. Now you're like, this is what I did over a 6 month period, over a 12-month period. Now I know that when the market is hot, I can perform. So that gives me the confidence to say, you know what, today's not a super hot day. I'm going to take my foot off the gas a little bit. I've got my cushion. I don't need to do anything crazy. I'm going to wait it out. And then, you're, because I found that for me that I saw a lot of traders who came in during the pandemic who had some really good early success, but then when the market got cold, they didn't take their foot off the gas and they gave back a lot of the gains they made. Right. So, they getting through that first difficult period, I think in a lot of ways, learning to trade during a difficult market is more beneficial long term, even though in the short term, learning to trade in a hot market is more rewarding, like short term. But
Yeah.
long
Well,
term, it teaches you good discipline.
yeah, and I do agree with that completely. However, I wasn't so lucky to make money during a hot market
Right? Because
either.
you're at the very
So,
beginning. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
So,
see what
because
you
when I
mean.
first started, you had started a small count challenge. Obviously,
Hmm.
your first one you did back in like I think it's 2017. I
Yeah,
want to
you
say
got it.
is when you
Yeah,
did the first one.
yeah.
But you started one in 2019, and I want to say it was December. And December
Yeah,
2019,
I did.
I
We were in Miami. I remember that.
was almost a year into my trading, and I watched you go from 500 to like almost 60 grand. Maybe it was
Yeah,
more. I don't know. But
yeah,
60 grand is in my mind in
yeah,
1 month.
yeah.
And I was like,
I know. Yeah,
holy crap,
yeah.
what am I doing wrong where I can't even make,
Well,
a buck? But there's obviously, there was, I mean, I've talked about my journey and everything. You just got to get to that place
mm,
before you think that you can just start flying.
mm-hmm,
And,
mm-hmm.
and I think, I mean, there's a lot of different personalities out there, but for my personality, I just wanted to keep jumping and flying, jumping and flying. And like, I couldn't get over that. There's a lot of different emotional aspects. You can have these issues that you deal with when you're losing, but I also deal with issues when I'm winning. And that can be just as bad. It may be even worse for me. Because sometimes when I start having a green streak and I do well, like that was my problem when I first got to that 4 or 5 months green.
Yeah.
I got overconfident.
Okay.
And then that set me back big. I almost gave back everything in those 4 or 5 months that I made
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
got so overconfident.
Right.
And so when I took a loss, it's like, oh, that's okay. I can make that back. And I
Mm-hmm.
take another loss, it's like, I can make that back. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's
I
it's
see.
kind of that combination of overconfidence and then spewing into this this cycle and the snowball of just continuing to make it worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people have got to be aware of both sides of it. You can get yourself in trouble when you're doing well too. So you
Yeah.
just gotta continue to be self-aware and check in with yourself.
Do you do meditation?
I don't.
No.
I tried that for a
Yeah.
while and
Yeah.
and not that I wouldn't talk crap on it. I think there's a lot of benefits to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It just for me, my
Yeah.
personality wasn't helpful because it was great to get me started, but I never had an issue starting the day. I always started nice and easy.
Sure.
If I
Yeah.
needed meditation,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was that last trade that I'm
Yeah.
taking. Like so,
So what do you do to help exercise that discipline? Because I feel like especially when you're in a hot streak, that's when sometimes you don't feel like you need the discipline because you're just doing really well.
yeah,
But that's when you can let your guard down.
yeah. Well, there's two different things. One is I trade things differently now, and so that I've kind of changed what I trade to go more with my personality. My major issue, the reason had I blew up several accounts even when I was with CMEG back in the 2020, 2021. My issue was I'd average down. And on small caps, you can't average down. I'm telling you, if there's anyone listening to this and you're averaging down in small caps, it's going to eventually bite you. It's just not worth it. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
someone's got some kind of weird strategy that works, and that's
No,
great.
but you
But
really got
for
to
the
cut your
most part,
losses. Yeah.
you just do.
Yeah.
Where now trading large caps, a little more conducive to me, allowing me to average down and
Okay.
taking things a little slower that way.
Okay.
Now, typically when I'm averaging down,
Yeah.
it's just it's a loss. I know it's going to be a loss, and so how I deal with the trade is I average down, and then as it bounces back up, I don't even get back to my original get-in price. I'm not trying to make money on the
It's
trade.
just
I'm just
softening
trying
the
to,
loss a little.
yeah, it's damage control.
Okay.
And so, but small caps, I thought, oh, I could average down and damage control with this situation.
Yeah.
Didn't work. It
No.
just made it worse almost every time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and of course, there'd be the one time that it helped. And so then I'd hold that in my thought,
Totally. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
this
That
works.
reinforcing a negative behavior. I know. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So getting back to your question, so there was that aspect of changing the personality of dealing with that. And then it was as difficult as it was having kids. I had two kids now in the last 6 years since trading. There were some very difficult times with that, getting up and not getting much sleep at night and then having to turn around and trade. There's at this age now, it's perfect. I mean, they're at an age where they're 4 and they're 1 and they're just so cute and fun and so it's pretty easy to be able to step away and go see the cute things, new things they're doing, and just be like, this is what it's about, and like the reason I got into trading was the freedom. It's not about making millions of dollars and being this rich, awesome person. That's not what it's about. It's about the freedom and freedom of time. I think that's the most valuable, uh, you know, currency or however whatever you want to call it in this world is time. And so,
Yeah.
being able to have that and then have kids and stay home with them,
Yeah.
that always brings me back and gives me that big picture perspective
Yeah.
that that's what it's about, and that
Yeah.
can bring me back to earth with my trading.
Yeah. And that's a big motivator for discipline, keeping that perspective. I have pictures of my kids that I keep here. And, when I average down, I like flip the picture upside down. I'm like, don't look at me. Don't watch me while I do this. I'm just kidding. But, I'm the same way. And I feel also that the experience of having kids and trading, the discipline and patience, like the amount of patience to be a good dad is like, I have two boys and they've got a lot of energy. And there are times where, you're not feeling your best. You've got a headache. You didn't sleep well. And it would be so easy to snap, to shout, and to be able to be very calm. I don't know that I can ever remember my father ever shouting at me. I can't off the top of my head. I'd really have to dig deep. He was a very, very kind, very gentle person, and I try to be that for my kids. And I feel like that has made me a better trader, which maybe trading has made me a better parent. Maybe it's gone both ways because it's allowed me to
Hmm.
already come to the table with a little more discipline than maybe someone else. I mean, we've all been there where you see a parent and it's just like, man, you got to take a breath. Like you are losing it. And you feel for them. And I mean, it's almost like the emotion that we might have in the middle of a trade where I wish someone would come over and be like, take a breath. Because you're so like frustrated. But, you can get that way with life too, with kids, with, just getting a flat tire on a rainy day. And it's just, yeah, having that ability just to take a breath and like perspective and be grateful for the opportunity. Like we've got $25,000 plus trading accounts. We're able to sit down, punch a couple keys each day. More often than not, walk away with a little bit of profit. Life is pretty good,
Yeah,
Don't sweat the small
absolutely.
stuff.
Absolutely.
Um, so, so let me ask this. So you gave one piece of advice for a beginner trader: don't average down on small caps. Do you have a second piece of advice that you would share, or some words of wisdom to someone who's getting started?
I mean, for just because it's my personality is don't overlook the emotional and the psychological aspects of trading.
Mm.
Um, I can't remember where I heard this from you, if it was in your education or if it was just on one of the mornings that you're talking, but you're like, people ask me how much is technical analysis and knowing how to trade
Yeah.
that way or in psychological, and you were kind of like, maybe it's 50-50, maybe 60-40, something like that. You were throwing out some numbers. And for me, it's 99% psychological.
Mm.
Like the technical stuff, not that your stuff isn't great. It is. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
And it makes it super easy to learn. But the emotional and the psychological training and education you give,
Yeah.
that is, I mean, just don't just blow past that. Like
Yeah.
not that I totally blew past that at first, but I didn't really give it the full attention that it needed.
Yeah.
And so like, golly, maybe some people don't need it as much. I get it if your personality is different, but
Yeah.
and for me, it is just everything.
It's funny you say that. The trade, anytime I upload trading psychology video to YouTube, it doesn't really perform well. People aren't really attracted to that topic. But it's such an important topic. And, the trader rehab program that I put together that we have at Warrior Trading, that Ted and Diane, helped me with for people that are kind of in this really acute spiral phase. And it's like, we need to break that cycle and stop bleeding, it's really valuable for the people that are at the point of needing it. But I think that if people understood trading psychology better from sort of the outset, it would save a lot of people from going into that place to begin with. But yeah, learning how to read candlestick charts, learning how to press the buy and sell button. I mean, these are, learning how to read level 2. These are skills, and they can be learned in a relatively short period of time. But the intuition of when to jump in, when to hold, when to cut the losses, and then the discipline, and then knowing like how am I gonna react in these moments? Yeah, those are big. So that is good recommendation. I do think Trade Mindfully is a good book on that topic. I do think Thinking in Bets is also a good book by Annie Duke, and The Power of Knowing When to Quit by Annie Duke is good. And if you haven't read my book, well, geez Louise, I mean, might as well throw it in the cart if you're going to get a couple other books on Amazon. So that's all really good. And I think that I think beginner traders will really appreciate that. I hope they do. And those of you guys who are tuning in, of course, Adam right in the chat room, you can see him every day. He's in there and he's chatting. So I think it's one of the things that's nice about those badges, even though it can be a little bit of like, oh man, I don't have a badge yet. It's nice to see people who have that badge, who have that seniority, who have that rank. And it's like, all right, this is someone who's been through the trenches a little bit and has gotten to this place, and you've done that. You've definitely earned a congratulations because you've done a great job. Keep
Thanks.
up the
I
hard work.
appreciate that.